All right, in this video, we're going to be talking about 3 different defenses to a Penal Code 273.5 charge. Penal Code 273.5 is sort of a elevated domestic violence charge. It can be charged as a misdemeanor or a felony. And the interesting thing is a lot of people who have never dealt with the criminal justice system, never been arrested, find themselves in a situation where they're facing a 273.5 charge, and it can be really scary because a lot of times we have clients who are college students or have really good jobs or have a professional license, and they're really concerned about losing their good job or not being as attractive in the job market if they have a felony domestic violence crime on their record. But the interesting thing is, it's not the type of offense where somebody truly feels like a criminal, if you will. In a 273.5 case, we have a lot of clients who, this is an argument that escalated and someone acted irrationally, and now they find themselves in a situation where they're facing a criminal charge where it was something that they never ever saw themselves in a criminal courtroom and having to deal with this type of case and how life-changing it can actually be. And so let's talk a little bit about what a 273.5 charge is, and then we'll get into the defenses. Penal Code 273.5, the title of it is corporal injury to a spouse. Basically, you're going to have some sort of physical attack, whether that's a punch, a kick, a slap, a squeeze, some sort of infliction of an injury, and then the added element is that it causes a traumatic condition. So this isn't just going to be a light type injury, right? Because that would be typically covered under the 243 charge, which is just a domestic battery, a 243E1. This one is going to be a bit more serious, where you're going to probably have some sort of markings or lacerations or something that's going to rise to the level of being able to create that traumatic condition, which is an element of a 273.5. So if you have an injury plus a traumatic condition, that's going to be your 273.5. So let's get into the defenses. So the first one is going to be that this case is based on lies. I can't tell you how many times we've defended people where that was the defense, where this was just a made-up situation, a false accusation. An example of a case that we had that was based on lies was there was a guy who was in a relationship with this woman and they had a kid together. He had a really good job. He had a professional license, but their relationship was a bit rocky, and he had threatened to leave a couple of times. And she basically told him that if you threaten to leave me again, or if you leave, then I'm going to make your life very difficult, right? And so they got into it again, and he threatened to leave, and he ended up leaving, right? Like leaving the apartment, not leaving the relationship, but he ended up leaving. And the next thing he knew, there were detectives trying to reach out to him to get his side of the story. He was completely confused because he didn't know, what side of any story that they were talking about, right? Like he was away and then gets a notification from a detective that they want to talk to him. Well, it turns out she ended up going to the hospital for injuries. Hospital personnel, they're mandatory reporters, so they have to get police involved. So that's what ended up happening. They contacted the police. She said, hey, my boyfriend did this to me, and she had some cuts and, markings that would indicate that she had been assaulted. When we talked to our client who, was freaking out because a detective was trying to get in hold of him, he said he didn't cause any injuries to this girl whatsoever. He got arrested and he had a court date set. The girlfriend didn't really understand just how serious it was for her to do what she did. She was acting out of jealousy, but this whole thing spiraled out of control and turned into him facing charges, which would have meant that if he would have been charged with and convicted of that offense, he would have lost his job. He would have lost his license. We were able to have our investigator reach out to her and have her tell the truth, which was that she, in retaliation against him saying that he was going to leave her, she decided to cause her own injuries to teach him a lesson and get him in trouble. But she just didn't realize how serious this was going to be. She was really regretful. She wanted to take it back. She no longer wanted the case to move forward. This actually ended up getting to the district attorney, and they were prepared to move forward with felony charges. She actually tried to reach out to the detective to stop this, and the detective was like, hey, it's out of our hands now. There's nothing we can do about it. And that tends to be a very frustrating thing for alleged victims who no longer want to push a case forward. They want to try and have a detective shut down the case, and once it goes too far, a lot of times there's either nothing they can do or nothing they're willing to do. And so it was really problematic, but we were able to get in contact with the district attorney, help them understand that, hey, even if you decided to file this case and move it forward, at a certain point, you're going to have to dismiss this because you're just not going to be able to prove this case beyond a reasonable doubt if it were to go to trial, because we have a statement in which this young lady had indicated that she caused her own injuries. So that's an example of a case that was based on lies. Another example is our client and his ex-girlfriend had since broken up, and they had a child in common. They had gotten an argument over custody. They get into it, and there's a struggle over a cell phone. The client was not being aggressive with her and certainly didn't intend to cause any sort of injuries. It was his cell phone. The female had grabbed the cell phone, and they kind of got into it over the cell phone. She had kind of markings over the struggle on her arms. She was a fair-skinned woman, and she had skin, that type of skin that just sort of bruises easily. So even though they were just kind of in a physical struggle over this phone, her arms looked way worse than what the situation was. And because she was mad at him, she lied and said that, he was basically aggressively grabbing her and manhandling her, and that he had pushed her and did all these things. And so unfortunately, if you're in that situation where you have a woman who has visible signs of injuries, a lot of times the police are going to take what they consider to be the safe route and, arrest the guy. And that's exactly what happened. And he came to us. He was facing criminal charges. And unfortunately, in this situation, it wasn't one where we were able to reach out to the woman and have her admit that she was lying. She, in fact, doubled down on what the statement was that she gave to the police. But our client was completely adamant that he did not cause these injuries in the way that she had indicated. On the contrary, this was a struggle over a cell phone. It was his phone, and she was the one who sort of initiated the aggression by trying to, grab hold of his phone. We were able to communicate to the district attorney that this situation was a total lie. Our client had no criminal history whatsoever. He was college educated. He has a really good job. He had no reason whatsoever to aggressively put hands on this woman, and they were able to see reason and decide to not file charges against our client. And we were super happy with that result because, again, our client had a really good job, and no matter what you do, unfortunately, if you have a felony domestic violence charge on your record, it is just going to make life harder for you in a lot of different ways. The next offense is going to be self-defense. And I know it can seem a little weird or off that a guy would claim self-defense against his girlfriend or his wife, especially if there's a huge size difference between the two. The reality is, just because you're a guy and she's a girl, if she attacks you, you don't just have to sit there and take it. Whether that's a slap, a punch, a push, a kick, or any of those things, you don't just have to sit there and take it. You are allowed to use reasonable force to defend yourself. So in that situation, if you do act in self-defense and you cause some sort of injury, and then the cops get involved and they're looking at this woman and they're looking at you and they see she has injuries, then you may end up getting arrested and potentially charged with domestic violence. But understand that you are allowed to act in self-defense, and that would be an outright defense to a 273.5 charge. The last situation is going to be where you actually did what you're alleged to have done, but there's a story behind it. And we've had this situation come up quite a bit where someone might just be going through a really stressful time, and unfortunately they act out of character. They've never been violent with their wife or girlfriend. They've never put hands on them, anything like that. But something went out of control. There might have been, alcohol or drugs involved, or somebody was in an extremely stressful situation and they acted out of aggression and either slapped their wife or, punched them or whatever they ended up doing. And, it can be really helpful if the wife or girlfriend is on their boyfriend or husband's side and wants to not see them prosecuted or wants to see the least amount of penalty possible. But even if that's not the case, and you do have a wife or a girlfriend who wants to see this person prosecuted, getting to know the client's story and being able to put the situation in context to show that, hey, this was completely outside of their character. They take the situation seriously. They want to right their wrongs. They assure the DA and the court that something like this is never going to happen again. Then really getting to know that person's story and getting to know who they are as a person and being able to communicate that to the DA can be a very effective defense strategy, because at the end of the day, the DA doesn't know anything about the person except for what's in the police report, right? And the police report's not doing a person any favors whatsoever. All it's doing is justifying why they found probable cause to arrest the person, right? So telling their background in terms of, their work history, their educational history, their volunteer work, that, they're a brother, they're a good son, they're a good father, they're a good husband or a boyfriend, all that positive information, letters of support, all these things to help the DA understand who it is that they're dealing with can be very instrumental in getting a good outcome. So, if you find yourself in a situation where you're facing a felony 273.5 charge, you've never dealt with the justice system ever, it can be a really scary thing. And it's really important to have a skilled, experienced, solid advocate who cares in your corner. Well, I hope you got something out of this video. If you did, make sure that you hit the like button. You can share it if you got something out of it. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel and turn on those notifications so you never miss a new video when it drops. As always, I want to thank you so much for watching, and until next time, peace.